Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2014 Budget Committee. This is the first of two delegation meetings. So before we go any further, any member of the public wishing to speak further regarding an issue on the 2014 Budget Committee agenda may appear before Council at its meeting on December 16th, 2013 at 7 p.m. when the recommendations from this meeting will go forward for final consideration. If you wish to speak as a delegation, please sign the sheet located at the back of the room or notify the Clerk's Department no later than noon the day of the Council meeting. Any PowerPoint presentations must also be forwarded to the Clerk's Department no later than noon the day of the meeting. I do not have any regrets from members of the committee. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? I see none. Thank you very much. We have only one discussion item, and that is to receive information from our delegates today. When we finish today, we will recess to Friday, December 6, 2013 in the Council chamber here at 9:30 when we'll have another day of delegations. I have one registered delegation, and that is Natalie DeCane. And did I get that pronunciation close enough? DeCane. Okay. And you're the first up and the only up today. Welcome, and if you wouldn't mind coming forward to our podium there, you have up to 10 minutes, and of course there may be questions of your delegation after that.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, and members of the council. I'm here tonight both, I guess, from a person that is active in the cycling world in Oakville. I do a lot of recreational, my daughter and I do a lot of recreational cycling, and I also commute to work. I work in downtown Oakville. So there's two aspects to it. There's the recreational side and, you know, being able to explore the community and also to get to work. My request this evening is, I understand that there's budget and allocation resources that have been allocated in order to implement the plans that you have in place. My request is, can we do it faster? And can we also ensure that there are funds that are given to increase awareness, on the importance of cycling in Oakville, and also on reiterating that it is safe to ride in Oakville. I personally live near Rebecca and Third Line, so I have about a 5-kilometer commute. I ride on Rebecca, and Rebecca, if anything, has some bike lanes, some not bike lanes, some it's going in and out. There's a lot of construction that's happening, of course, at Dorval and Rebecca with the new development area. On any given morning as I'm commuting to work, although I have a lot of confidence and experience in riding, I'm often squeezed to the right and very close to the curb because there is not a dedicated line. So I think that at least having that, even having an emblem of a bicycle on the ground, would give me more safety. My daughter goes to Blakelock. She cycles to downtown Oakville to go shopping. We both go downtown to have breakfast in downtown Oakville on the weekends. I think we need to do a lot more faster in order to ensure that, you know, we get people out cycling. I've been to a lot of events lately where I'm speaking with other community members. I'm hearing things that I don't even want to take my bike out because it's not safe to ride. I even heard a lady say that she was afraid to have her child cycle to school because of the fear of being abducted. I don't think that that's what Oakville is all about. I think that, you know, this is a fantastic community. I love biking to work. I love seeing everything. I get to work refreshed. And I'm sure that there's something that we can do to help, you know, change this thought process, because it's ridiculous. This is not what people should be thinking. That's about it.
Okay, are there any questions? Councillor Lapworth?
I have questions of staff.
Okay.
I have a question of staff too.
Any questions of the delegate?
No.
No?
No. Thank you very much for your information, and we do have some questions of our staff, I think, related to this. Councillor Lapworth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's Hamilton and Mississauga where I've seen, maybe even Brampton, where I've seen the bicycle symbol in the curb, and there's no designated line to designate the bicycle lane, but there is a bicycle symbol. How much does it cost to put those individual symbols in? Do we know?
Hello. Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a relatively inexpensive option that we have in our toolbox that the town definitely is starting to implement on some of our streets in our network. That symbol is typically referred to as a sharrow, and it designates a portion of the driving lane that would represent where the cyclist is intended to cycle, beside the through traffic as well. So definitely something that we will be implementing at a little bit more of a rapid pace in some of our signed route areas. But I'm more than open to looking at any specific project where you feel it may be accommodated.
Thank you for that. Now, do we have a sign on a post that says the bicycle lane starts here, or something similar to that?
Through you, yes, we do. Yes, we do. Those are for designated bicycle lanes only. So that sign is regulated underneath the Highway Traffic Act and can be enforced by the police if someone is driving in that area.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Councillor Elgar?
Yeah, thank you very much. Based on what we heard from the delegate, I wonder, can you help us with the master plan we've done and how we're working with the region to come up with a bicycle safety strategy throughout, not just Oakville, but Halton on the major roads, mm-hmm. and also the minor collectors?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think it's great to hear a delegation about cycling in the town of Oakville. Thank you very much. 5 years ago, we probably would have heard that delegation and didn't have a plan at all. And now that we do, and we're able to successfully implement a strategy and outreach, including education, enforcement, and infrastructure within the town at a pace where we didn't have that at all before, I think is a great achievement for the town in the last 5 years alone. We've only been implementing infrastructure dedicated to cycling underneath this budget for the last 3 years, and I think we've done a great job. The region is now coming along with an active transportation master plan that you referenced there, and they haven't had one either. So you're starting to see more municipalities have these dedicated plans for active transportation to try and move people not in their vehicle alone, but other modes of transportation. And you saw the town take another great step last year when we approved the switching gears and the transportation master plan update that just focused explicitly on trying to get people out of their car and into other modes of transportation, such as transit, cycling, and alternative ways to get to work. I think we've made great strides, and I think we can continue to try and change that behavior.
The delegation mentioned that can we do it a lot faster? And also about increasing awareness. Like, what are we doing with increasing, do we have plans for increasing awareness?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. There is definitely some strategies that the Active Transportation Master Plan has in it to increase awareness. And one note that I heard today was about the child cycling to school. And that's definitely a challenge that we've had not only here at the town, but across the region with regards to the Active and Safe Routes to School project. And that is definitely an example of the type of education and awareness that we need to get out there to the public. That's a big portion of the commuting percentage that we can change behavior is how children get to school. So that's one example of education. You know, and the town's taken some other steps. We had the changing of the bylaws with regards to education about how people cycle on sidewalks. We had the education initiative that we put out with the postcards. We're starting to see a lot more bike filets through organizations such as Cycle Oakville, excuse me. And, sorry. And we also had the great success at the Canadian Open this year, where we had a bike valet and partnerships joining together for people to get to an event such as that other than using their car. I think that we have gone to the limits that we can right now with our resources with regards to education. Is there a way to excel the active transportation master plan in the infrastructure and education component? Absolutely, but it would take more resources at the town.
Now, with regard to Rebecca, like she was saying, how it stops and starts where, where there's a bicycling lane, are we going to be addressing that in the near future? Or is that the way it is, the way it's going to be?
I'm not going to say that's the way it's going to be. I would hope that we have a thorough network of cycling routes that would take us from one end of the town to the other, north to south and east to west, as it was planned to be. These primary routes, let's have it on major corridors, such as Rebecca. The intention of implementing the active transportation master plan was always envisioned to be kind of piecemeal. You have to implement the infrastructure at an opportunity that kind of aligns with some of the other major capital projects. So Spears Road, for instance, went through a reconstruction west of the GO station. We had an opportunity to implement cycling lanes. Those cycling lanes stop now. For us to go in and implement cycling lanes on Spears Road now, we would be using capital dollars that are dedicated towards active transportation versus capital dollars for a road reconstruction project. So that savings of money by using our money in other areas to implement other portions of the network are very beneficial to us. It was always kind of mentioned when we went through the active transportation master plan that you're going to have to find these opportunities because you can implement your plan faster by piggybacking on other capital projects. That being said, you're left with the result of kind of this broken network for potentially the first 5 to 10 years.
Thank you very much, Chris.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mayor Burton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious to know if we have posted anywhere a map or other schedule that would show our planned rollout of bike lanes so that people would see when and where they were coming. As part of our, in the active transportation master plan, we have the map of the bike lanes that we're gonna get. Do we have anywhere that shows our residents could go and look up when is their piece going to be done? Are we doing that already?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the active transportation master plan has almost like a phasing implementation map. So the residents could go to the master plan and see that a certain section of roadway was maybe recommended for the short term, the 0 to 5 window, and then the midterm, the 6 to 10 window of years, and then post 10 years. As for a specific year or construction schedule, that isn't available as it is for the capital roads projects.
Okay, thank you. And have we seen, Mr. Chair, have we seen any sign of pushback to our active transportation master plan rollout of bike lanes from, war on the car type people? Or are we experiencing a fairly smooth transition?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe we're experiencing a fairly smooth transition to implementing cycling infrastructure in the town. I am aware that there is some conflicts between both users, and that tends to happen, but I have not heard any significant pushback for cycling infrastructure in the town.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Councillor Demoff, I'll let you speak, and then I've got a couple of comments.
Thank you for coming out, Natalie, and sharing your concerns. And Chris, I have a couple questions specifically related to what Natalie was asking, because I know when we've implemented the master plan, it's easier to do on the newer streets, which are wider. And I think there's more of a challenge on roads in my ward, in Ward 2, and the older streets south of the QEW, because they're not as wide to be able to just put in a bike lane. She was talking about sharrows on the road, and so were you. Is there not a limit to the size of the space to be able to paint sharrows? We can't just put them on any road, can we?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. There is guidelines that go along with any type of the cycling facilities that we would be implementing on our streets. Sharrows typically go on a roadway where we can't accommodate a dedicated bike lane, but have enough space to put the stamp down where we can safely say that a car and a vehicle can travel in the same lane. When that lane becomes smaller or more narrow, where the car would have to either enter into another travel lane, that is typically when we wouldn't be installing sharrows.
Because knowing the section that she's talking about on Rebecca, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't have room to be putting sharrows there without the car going into the center left turn lane. I think it would be similar to Third Line on going between Bridge Road and Spears Road, where you've got a center left turn lane, but there isn't enough room to actually implement the sharrows on the road, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. And there are other alternatives that we can look at other than just paint on the road to try and, let's say, remind the motorists that cyclists may be using that corridor. We can put up signed routes or some temporary warning signage that would try and help if there is a continued problem or conflict between a vehicle and a cyclist.
And my last question, and I don't need the answer to this right away, but if you know what is in our budget for this year for active transportation and what we have, you had mentioned there's a 5-year window for, I think our review for the active transportation master plans in 2015, is that right? How much we've spent, are spending in 2014, and what the whole window would be for the 5-year period? Don't need it right now.
Okay.
Then maybe I'll help you with that. Councillor, if you look on page 9 of the capital budget book, and if you look on pages 319 and 320 of the same capital budget book, on page 9 is our renewal infrastructure work for active transportation master plan, and over the next 10 years is 2.7 million, and for this year it's $250,000. And for the, on page 319 and 320 is part of the growth plan, and it includes, over the next 10 years, $685,000 in what I'll describe as initiatives that relate to education and communication and that sort of thing. And on the next page, there's $3.5 million in capital infrastructure for active transportation. So those are over 10 years. And over the next year, over 2014, that's $250,000. So in 2014, there's something, if I do the math correctly, $637,000, I think, in active transportation master plan type initiatives. And on top of that, there are some other initiatives that are buried in some of the road work, where a road is being expanded or changed, and there would be a cycling lane or multi-use path being put in as part of that. So there's a number of different places, and I wondered if our staff would be able to help not only the committee but the public understand better how those three elements, I guess, on page 9 and page 319 and 320 of the capital book, how those get spent, how those get turned into from a lump sum into specific initiatives, so people can understand which trail or which sidewalk or which thing is going to get done in 2014 specifically. Do you have a listing, or I know in previous years we have had reports that eventually come to committee outlining how the allotted funds will be used in that given year. And so they might not be allotted at this point, but they'll be allotted more specifically later.
Yes. We'll go with a yes.
So is there a
Mr. Chair.
time frame for that report?
Annually, I present a report to the Community Services Committee with regards to the capital projects for active transportation for the following year. So it's my understanding that we have approximately $250,000 for 2014. The list of projects we would determine based on some of those other projects that you were mentioning. So I guess you can imagine if we had to have a hierarchy of projects that we had to look at from an engineering construction point of view, we would first look at all of the road widenings and urbanization projects. And if we can fit cycling initiatives inside of there, those are the ones that are first. And then following such, we have road rehabilitation, traffic calming projects, and then obviously active transportation. So when we get down to the active transportation master plan, that's when I typically put together a list of projects in the beginning of next year for you for the following year. The dollar amounts, if I may, that you are referring to in the subsequent years have all been obviously costed out as part of the transportation master plan project that we did in the DC background study. So all of the projects that were outlined and allotted money for were the ones that were taken from the overall active transportation master plan, which has all of the projects in it. But again, it didn't have specific years that those dollar amounts were tied to.
So in essence, the I guess to paraphrase the whole discussion, we have an active transportation master plan, and it will require a certain number of dollars to be allocated to fulfill it, and this 10-year capital plan is designed to mesh with that active transportation master plan call for resources.
As I understand it, the best it can, yes.
Yes, okay. So I hope that helps answer the question around resources and how we've come to what we've got. Are there any other questions on any of this? Councillor Elgar?
Just to dig into it just a little bit further, bicycle lanes, how many lane kilometers do we have, and do we have a history of how many we've added, and how many are we looking at adding this year, whether it's on existing road or new roads, or like I would just like to get it, to put a number to it, and then instead of just a dollar. I'd be very interested in knowing that information. And I realize you probably don't have it at your fingertips, but
I wish I did.
yeah, but I think it would be good for us to know, so that everybody can see just how much we are adding or what we are doing, in fact.
Absolutely. And if you are, I guess, specifically wanting to know about the detail of each one of the facilities, like bike lanes versus multi-use trails, we could get that information for you as well.
It'd be good to show the people that where we were and where we're going,
Absolutely.
where we're coming from, because we were a bit sketchy, I think, on bike lanes as an awful lot of other municipalities, but I think now we're moving in the right direction. I understand what delegation is talking about, where you have them, now you see them, now you don't, almost, as you're going along. You know, and that how we are addressing and trying to get the best use of every dollar, that if we're building new roads, then we'll get the bike lanes type thing, but also we do retrofits. I know you did one in Glen Abbey where you took, and it was mainly for traffic calming, you did it. And you know, you still get complaints where we need more lanes for the cars, but I think the traffic calming approach absolutely worked from the stats we've seen, how it did slow traffic down, so, which is a good thing. And maybe you have something right there, do you? You can share with us?
507, 507. Is this out of the budget book? Yeah.
I did pull the two staff reports that Chris had spoken to. He reports the beginning of the year in 2011. He reported out on the amount of trails or the amount of active transportation facilities that were provided in that year, and it was a total of 31 kilometers. And then again in 2012, he reported out there was an additional 17 kilometers added to the network. And then projected for 2013 is an additional 20 kilometers. And then, as Chris has said, early in the year in 2014, he'll report forward on the 2014 program to project what we would deliver then in the 2014 year.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, because I think it helps when you have real numbers that people can see we're moving in the right direction. We're not moving in the rear view mirror. Thank you.
Any others? Okay. Natalie, I hope that has enlightened you a little bit on all the stuff going on. I don't know whether you were aware of the active transportation master planning process previously.
I wasn't until just recently. It's very, very interesting for sure, and it's admirable what's being done by the town. I'm just trying to make a voice for the kids and the adults out there that just want to ride in Oakville, and hope to see it sooner than later, because especially on Rebecca, the interesting point there is that the road was recently paved just east of Blakelock. And the road is just as wide there as it is just east of Dorval. Yet on Dorval, there's a bike lane. So to your point, this in and out, I thought, oh, well, maybe the road is narrower, but it's not. It's just either it's an oversight, or I'm not sure how the decisions are made when paving the road. There's a very big center lane. I think there's room in there for at least a little bit of a lane, but I'll let Chris speak to that. He seems to be the one in charge of that. So, but good to hear that advancements are being made, and I look forward to being able to ride to work safely.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Are there any other members of the public here who wish to provide any information to the Budget Committee at this time? Okay. Then I think we're ready to recess, and we will return here again on Friday, December 6th at 9:30. And at this point, I understand we do have at least one delegate, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.